The first lie was the word closure. They put it on the invitation, the consent form, the website, the producer's clipboard, even the frosted glass outside the room. Closure lab. 48-hour reconciliation trial. It sounded scientific. Clean. Almost merciful. But when the door sealed behind me with a hydraulic hiss and my ex-husband smiled from the other side of the soundproof room, I understood something my body had known long before my mind admitted it. Some people do not want closure. They want one last locked door. The room was white, cold, and too quiet. No windows, no clocks except the countdown timer mounted above the exit. 47 hours, 59 minutes, and 56 seconds. 2 chairs, 1 narrow table. 4 official cameras behind black glass. A ceiling microphone, a sensor band clipped to my finger. A producer's voice in the speaker telling us to begin whenever we felt ready. My ex, Adrian Vale, leaned back like he owned the air. He was handsome in the same way a knife can be shiny. Dark hair, perfect jaw, calm eyes, soft gray sweater, wedding ring removed for the cameras, but the pale mark still visible on his finger. To anyone watching the facility feed, he looked like a reformed man hoping for peace. At the 15-minute mark, his mask slipped for the first time, not loudly. Just a whisper when he leaned close enough that the room microphone might miss it. You still flinch when I lower my voice. My pulse jumped. The sensor on my finger flashed red. Adrian smiled at the official camera and said, "I am here to listen." What he did not know was that I had broken one rule before entering. Under the cuff of my left sleeve, my smartwatch was already recording, not just recording. Lip-syncing every second to an encrypted folder my attorney, my sister, and a domestic violence advocate could access in real time. Even if Adrian smashed the watch, the audio would survive him. They thought they had locked me in with my past. They did not know my wrist was building the future case. My name is Rowan Ellis. I am 34 years old, and for 7 years I was married to a man people described as intense, brilliant, misunderstood, passionate, complicated, wounded, charismatic, and under pressure. Nobody called him dangerous until I had enough evidence to make danger undeniable. Adrian and I met at a startup fundraiser in Denver. He was the founder of a mental wellness technology company that built apps for workplace stress. I was a product researcher hired by another firm to study user trust, behavioral design, and digital safety. He gave a speech that night about empathy in software. He said technology should protect vulnerable people from the cruelty of chaotic systems. I clapped. That is how good he was. He could sell safety while becoming the most unsafe person in your life. In the beginning, he studied me like devotion. Coffee exactly how I liked it. Playlists for my drives. Notes tucked into books. Texts before meetings. He remembered my mother's medical appointments, my sister's dog's name, the anniversary of my father's death. He said attention was love. Later, attention became surveillance. He knew when my phone battery dipped below 20%. He knew when I took a different route home. He knew which friend I texted after we argued. He knew if I turned off location sharing because he had created 3 other ways to track me: shared calendars, smart home access, a car app registered under his email, and a family safety device he installed in my keychain after calling Denver dangerous for women. I used to think abuse meant shouting. Adrian rarely shouted. He optimized. He corrected my memory gently. He archived messages before I could reread them. He used therapy words like dysregulated, anxious, avoidant, reactive. He would say, "I am concerned about how you experience conflict." After he had kept me awake until 3 a.m., demanding I admit a tone I did not use. He moved money between accounts and called it financial streamlining. He showed my friends edited screenshots and said he was worried I was becoming unstable. By the time I left, I no longer trusted my own first reaction to pain. That was the worst thing he took. Not money, not sleep, not friendships. My instinct, the divorce was supposed to end it. It did not. The settlement was messy because Adrian fought everything with the patience of a man who enjoyed legal fees as punishment. He wanted the condo, the company equity, the dog we did not have. He wanted the right to say he had been abandoned by a woman too broken to receive love. He did not want reconciliation. He wanted the story. And for a while, he had it. The first real crack in his public mask came from a voicemail he did not mean to leave. 6 months after the divorce finalized, Adrian sent me a message through an old shared cloud account I had forgotten existed. A link to a folder titled Us Before You Broke. Inside were photos from vacations, screenshots of love notes, and one audio file. At first, I thought it was another emotional trap. Then my sister May listened before I could stop her. The audio was Adrian speaking to someone else, maybe his assistant, maybe himself. We never proved it. He said, "She will fold if she thinks everyone sees her as unstable. She hates being watched." May turned white. "Rowan," she said, "you need to save this." I did. My attorney, Layla Hart, told me the audio was useful but not enough. It showed pattern, not admission tied to specific harm. The court had already closed most issues. Adrian's public reputation remained intact. He was still speaking at conferences about ethical wellness design. He had renamed his company Havenform. He had a podcast. He had followers who wrote things like, "Men can be survivors too," under his posts about narcissistic abandonment. Every time he used my pain as brand architecture, I felt a little less real. Then Closure Lab contacted me. The email came from a documentary studio partnering with a behavioral research facility outside Santa Fe. They were producing a long-form series about unresolved relationships, trauma narratives, and AI-assisted reconciliation. The premise sounded like a nightmare dressed as innovation. Former partners enter a monitored environment for 48 hours. AI prompts guide conversation. Biometric data tracks stress, empathy, and truthfulness. Human therapists observe. Participants leave with closure reports. I deleted it, then May called. "Adrian posted something," she said. I already knew before she read it. Sometimes the only way to stop being haunted is to face the room you keep running from. I have agreed to a supervised closure trial. I hope she finds peace. He had tagged the facility. He had not named me, but everyone knew. Within 2 hours, people from our old network were texting. "Are you doing this? That sounds brave. Maybe it will help. Maybe this is your chance to clear the air." One former friend wrote, "I know things were complicated, but Adrian seems sincere. Sincere, that word has protected more predators than darkness ever did." I called Layla. She said, "Do not do this." I said, "What if he lies for 48 hours and people believe him? Then he lies. You do not owe the public a performance. What if he says something? What if he hurts you? What if he already has? And this is the only room where he might admit it." Leela was quiet, then she said, "If you choose this, we build a safety protocol they do not control. The facility had rules, no personal recording devices, no outside communication except scheduled check-ins, no unapproved electronics, no physical contact, no threats, no blocking exits, no leaving the room except during supervised breaks unless emergency protocol triggered. Official cameras and microphones would record everything, but raw footage belonged to the production company and research facility unless subpoenaed. That last part mattered. If Adrian performed for the official cameras, the facility controlled the evidence. If the microphones missed whispers, the facility controlled the silence. If the producers decided a moment was too legally risky, the world would never see it. I had spent too many years letting other people hold the only copy of my reality. Layla found the opening. The state allowed one-party consent recording in that context, and the participation agreement permitted medically necessary personal devices if disclosed to legal counsel and not used to communicate with the other participant. My smartwatch had a safety app installed after the divorce. It could record audio discreetly, monitor my heart rate, and live sync encrypted files every 30 seconds through a cellular connection. It was marketed for journalists and field researchers in hostile environments. Layla called it my black box. May called it the tiny witness. The facility did not want me to wear it. We pushed back through counsel. They relented only because I framed it as a panic and medical monitoring device tied to trauma response. I did not tell Adrian. I did not tell the producers about live sync details. I told them I would wear the watch for personal safety logging. That was true. It was also incomplete. Before I entered, Layla created a private legal link. May had access. So did Dana, a domestic violence advocate who had helped me rebuild after the divorce. The feed was not public. It was not entertainment. It was preservation. If my heart rate spiked, If I press the watch crown 3 times, if the watch detected sudden impact or removal, the file would lock, duplicate, and alert them. We practiced, press once, marker, press twice, note significant moment, press 3 times, emergency. May sat across from me in her kitchen while I repeated it until muscle memory formed. "Do you feel like a spy?" she asked. "No," I said. "I feel like a woman who learned rooms can lie." The night before the trial, I barely slept. I packed soft clothes, my own tea bags, legal documents, printed emergency contacts, and the smartwatch charger. I reread the facility schedule, Owner 0, entry and baseline, Owner 1, relationship narrative, Owner 6, memory conflict protocol. Hour 12, separate sleep pods, that's an 18, accountability dialogue, 24, empathy, reset, 36, closure letter, that's an 48, exit debrief. It looked scientific, but trauma does not care about schedules. It cares about proximity to the person who taught your body that love means danger. The facility was called Meridian House, which made it sound like a spa instead of a soundproof experimental building on the edge of the desert. It had glass walls, polished concrete floors, desert plants in black pots, and staff who spoke in the gentle tones of people trained never to say trapped when they can say contained. Adrian arrived 15 minutes after me. I watched him through the intake room glass. He hugged the producer, hugged him. Like they were old friends. He wore a soft gray sweater, dark jeans, expensive boots, and the expression of a man who had already forgiven himself on everyone else's behalf. When he saw me, he placed one hand over his heart. I looked away. The lead producer, Simone, explained the process again. The room would be locked during each session for acoustic integrity and safety. Breaks every 4 hours. Sleep pods separated by a movable partition. Therapists observing. AI prompts displayed on the wall. Participants could request pause. Emergency release available. Leela had made them add 1 sentence to the consent form. Participant may exit at any time upon verbal request, and failure to facilitate exit will void consent. I made Simone read it out loud. She did. Adrian smiled. Still so precise. I pressed the smartwatch crown once maker. We had not even entered yet. At 9 a.m., they walked us into the main room. It was colder than I expected. Soundproof rooms have a deadness to them. No traffic hum, no birds, no distant voices unless the speaker clicks on. The silence made every breath feel recorded. The table sat in the center like a negotiation altar. Above the exit, the digital timer began at 48 hours. Official cameras blinked red. My smartwatch screen stayed dark. The first AI prompt appeared on the wall. Describe what you hope to receive from this process. Adrian looked directly into camera 2. I hope Rowan finally feels safe enough to tell the truth about why she left, he said. And I hope she understands that I have always wanted healing, not blame. A perfect answer's smooth, vulnerable, framed as concern. Then he looked at me, and for just a second, the right corner of his mouth lifted. The 15-minute mask had begun. For the first hour, Adrian performed so beautifully that I almost admired the craftsmanship. He kept his hands visible. He spoke slowly. He said my name with soft regret. He admitted to mistakes in communication, emotional overreach, mutual escalation, and not always understanding how my intensity landed. These phrases sound like accountability if you do not know what they are designed to avoid. My mistakes in communication meant nights he kept me awake. Emotional overreach meant tracking my car. Mutual escalation meant I cried after he cornered me, and then he called my tears abusive. Intensity landed meant he was the storm, and I was responsible for describing weather politely. The AI prompt asked us to share a memory of feeling loved. Adrian said, Rowan leaving notes in my laptop bag. I said Adrian turning off my phone during arguments so I could not text my sister. The room shifted. Simone's voice came through the speaker. Rowan, the prompt is asking for a positive memory. I know. Adrian lowered his eyes. This is what I mean. She cannot receive ceased. My watch tapped my wrist, haptic alert, heart rate spike. Not mine. His Lila had helped configure the app to mark audio moments when my heart rate rose, but it also captured ambient data from the facility sensor display when I faced the wall. The facility's biometric dashboard showed both participants. Adrian's heart rate had jumped when I named the phone. Interesting, I pressed the crown twice. Significant moment, at hour 2, he began rewriting. You asked me to help you with your anxiety around communication, he said. I asked you not to take my phone. You handed it to me. You held your hand out and said if I loved you, I would prove I had nothing to hide. That is not how I remember it. Of course not. Mary under coercion becomes a crime scene after the cleanup crew leaves. Objects moved, blood painted over, witnesses tired. Adrian's gift was walking into the cleaned room and asking why I was still upset. But this time, my wrist was recording. The table microphone heard the official exchange. The watch caught the lower register, the tiny scoff after I answered. The breath he released when the therapist redirected. The whisper when he leaned over during a water break and said, "Still performing victimhood for women who cannot save you." I did not react. I pressed the crown once maker. The first true glitch came at the 15-minute mark of our second session, just as the countdown clock showed 45 hours and 12 minutes remaining. The AI prompt asked, "What do you believe the other person most misunderstands about your intentions?" Adrian looked at the camera. "She misunderstands my devotion as control." I laughed, not loudly, not dramatically, just once before I could stop myself. His head turned, there he was, not the wounded ex, not the soft-spoken founder, the man who hated being interrupted by reality. "What is funny?" he asked. "That sentence. It is my truth. No, it is your brand." His eyes cooled. Careful. The room did not catch it, or if the official microphone did, nobody reacted. His voice had dropped into the private register he used at home, the one that used to make me check exits. The watch caught it clearly. Waveform spike. Timestamp. Heart rate marker. I looked down at the table, not at my wrist. "Careful of what?" I asked. Adrian smiled at camera 2. "Careful not to dismiss vulnerability when it is offered." Then, under his breath, "You know what happens when people think you are unstable." My skin went cold. I pressed the crown twice. He leaned back, public mask restored. The therapist, Dr. Lin, said, "Adrian, can you clarify what you mean by devotion?" He gave a beautiful answer. He talked about fear, abandonment, childhood attachment wounds, the pressure of loving someone who kept pulling away. I watched Dr. Lin nod, cautious but engaged. I watched Simone scribble notes. I watched the official room believe it was witnessing complexity. My watch had the translation. Careful. You know what happens when people think you are unstable. At hour 6, during the memory conflict protocol? I brought up the night in Boulder. The room temperature seemed to drop. Adrian's face did not change, but his pulse on the facility dashboard jumped from 78 to 109. The night in Boulder was the night I stopped thinking of him as cruel and started understanding him as dangerous. We had gone to a client retreat. He accused me of flirting with a product director because I laughed at a joke about hotel coffee. In our room, he blocked the door with a chair, took my phone, and made me repeat that I had embarrassed him until I stopped arguing and started shaking. At 2:17 a.m., he opened the balcony door and said, "If you ever make me look small in public again, I will make sure everyone knows what you become in private." I never told the court that exact sentence because I had no recording. Now I said, "In Boulder, you blocked the door." Adrian went still. Then he smiled for the cameras. "I remember you having a panic episode." I pressed the crown twice. 8 was when the room began working on me. That is the part people do not understand about being trapped with someone who knows your wiring. You do not simply sit there strong because you know the truth. The body remembers old systems. It tries to survive by using the tools that once worked. So when Adrian softened his voice, part of me wanted to soften too. When he said, "I know I scared you sometimes," a small ancient part of me wanted to reward him for admitting the smallest possible truth. When he looked tired and said, "I loved you more than I knew how to handle," my nervous system flashed an old instruction. If he is sad, reduce threat. That is how abuse trains you. His sadness becomes a fire alarm. Your needs become background noise. Dr. Lin asked me what closure would feel like. I said, "Like not having to convince anyone." Adrian sighed. "Rowan, nobody is asking you to convince anyone." I looked at him. He was beautiful when he lied. Not in a romantic way, in a practiced way. Smooth face, soft eyes, slight crease between brows, concern arranged like furniture. "My career collapsed because people believed your version," he said. "Your career shifted because people saw some evidence. Evidence you curated." reality I preserved. His jaw tightened, haptic pulse on my wrist maker. During the scheduled meal break, staff brought food into the room because the trial required continuous environment integrity. Translation: the room stayed closed. We ate at opposite ends of the table. Adrian picked at salad. I ate nothing. My stomach had become a fist. The official cameras remained on wide angle, but the facility staff stepped away from the speaker. That was when Adrian tested the blind spot. He dropped his napkin and bent under the table. When he came up, his chair scraped closer, just 2 inches. Then another. He looked at the black glass, then at the ceiling microphone. "Camera 3 has glare from the table," he whispered. "They cannot see your left hand." I froze. He smiled. "Still think rooms protect you?" I did not look at my watch. I pressed the crown once with my thumb against my knee. The audio waveform spiked in the LiveSync folder hundreds of miles away. May later told me that was the moment she stood up so fast her chair fell backward. By hour 12, the official narrative and the hidden narrative had become 2 different films. In the official film, Adrian was controlled, remorse adjacent, frustrated by my resistance but trying. I was guarded, tired, occasionally sharp, visibly stressed. In the hidden film, he whispered threats during water breaks, corrected my memories in low tones, and used the cameras like witnesses he had already seduced. "You know they see it," he whispered once while Dr. Lin reviewed notes behind the glass. "You look reactive, I look calm, same as always. Press, Layla cannot build a case on your feelings. Press, Isaac could not handle the real you either." Is he still pretending, Press? The mention of Isaac hit harder than I expected. Adrian knew exactly where to aim. Isaac had come into my life after the divorce, patient and solid, but we had postponed engagement because I was still rebuilding. Adrian loved turning safety into doubt. I said nothing. He leaned back and spoke for the official camera. "I want Rowan to know I released her from needing me to be the villain." I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because my wrist was carrying a chorus of his real voice under the sermon. At midnight, the movable partition came down between sleep pods. We were technically in separate alcoves, monitored, lights dimmed, door still locked from the outside. I lay on a narrow bed under a gray blanket and watched the countdown clock through the gap near the ceiling. 36 hours left. My watch battery showed 62%. I plugged it into the tiny portable charger sewn into my sleeve cuff, another detail Layla and May had insisted on. It looked ridiculous when we practiced. It felt holy now. At 1:08 a.m., Adrian spoke from the other side of the partition. "Rowan." I did not answer. "I know you are awake." The official overnight microphone was supposed to be limited for privacy. My watch was not. "Do you remember the mountain house?" he whispered. I stopped breathing. The mountain house was the place he had taken me after I first threatened to leave. 2 days in a rental outside Breckenridge where he cried, apologized, cooked soup, and then used my exhaustion to make me sign a statement saying I had exaggerated our problems because of work stress. Later, he sent that statement to 2 friends when I asked for help. "I pressed the crown once," he whispered. "I still have the first draft, the one where you admitted more." There was no first draft, but the threat was clear. If he needed evidence, he would create it. I whispered back for the first time. "Good." He went quiet. I said, "Say more." He did not. He was learning slowly that the room might not be as private as he believed. But not fast enough. 18 was the accountability dialogue. The AI prompt appeared in white text on the wall. "Take responsibility for one specific action that caused harm." Adrian stared at it for a long time. Then he said, "I take responsibility for loving Rowan in a way that sometimes overwhelmed her nervous system." I closed my eyes. Dr. Lin intervened. "That is framed around her response." "Can you name an action?" Adrian's mouth tightened. I monitored her location, without consent. She had consented earlier in the relationship. After she revoked consent? He took a breath. Yes, my watch tapped. His heart rate again. Dr. Lin said, "What impact did that have?" Adrian looked at me. It made her feel controlled. I opened my eyes. It was control. He looked at the camera. It functioned as control. Because it was. His jaw flexed, then he leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice soft for the room. "I am trying to meet you halfway," I said. Truth is not halfway between what happened and what you can tolerate admitting. The official room went silent. Behind the glass, Simone's pen stopped. For one moment, the mask cracked in full view. Anger crossed his face fast as lightning, then vanished. But my watch captured the sound he made under his breath. Ungrateful. I pressed the crown. At hour 20, I mentioned the money, specifically the emergency account he drained 2 weeks after I filed for divorce. He had always claimed it was a marital transfer, a misunderstanding corrected later. I had suspected he moved it to punish me, but never proved intent. The official bank records only showed movement. His explanation had been clean enough to avoid consequences. I said, "You moved $38,000 the morning after I told May I was leaving." He smiled faintly. "I was protecting assets." "From what?" "Your instability." There it is again. It was real. "What did you think I would do without that money?" He looked at me for a long time. Then, too softly for the ceiling microphone but perfectly for the watch, he said, "Crawl back before rent was due." My thumb pressed the crown twice. Significant moment. Across the country, Layla heard it live. Later, she told me she stood in her office and said, "Got him," to nobody at all. The facility staff almost ended the trial at hour 22. Not because they knew everything. Because even the official feed began showing enough deterioration that liability entered the room. Dr. Lin requested a pause. Simone asked if I wanted to continue. The safety coordinator reminded us of exit rights. Adrian immediately shifted into concern. "I do not want Rowan pushed beyond capacity," he said. "I came here for closure, not harm." I looked at him. He looked back with gentle eyes and dead patience. If I stopped then, we had enough to show pattern. Enough for Layla to reopen parts of the legal conversation. Enough to protect my public credibility with people who mattered. But not enough for the thing I had begun to suspect was coming. Adrian had referred twice to the first draft from the Mountain House. He had mentioned knowing where the official blind spots were. He had hinted at future evidence. He was not just defending the past. He was preserving a weapon. I needed him to say what it was. Maybe that was reckless. Maybe every survivor has one moment where the desire to end the lie burns hotter than caution. I told Simone I would continue under stricter conditions. No unsupervised meal breaks. Chairs reset to marked floor positions. Watch remaining on. Immediate exit if he stood without permission. She agreed. Adrian smiled like I was proving his point. "More rules," he said. "Yes," I said. "I like living." Hour 24 began with the empathy reset. The AI prompt asked each of us to read a generated summary of the other person's pain. The software had processed our statements and produced language meant to encourage perspective. Adrian read his summary beautifully. Rowan experienced my intensity as surveillance and emotional pressure. She lost trust in her home, friendships, finances, and memory. She fears being disbelieved more than she fears being disliked. I hated that it was accurate. Then he looked up and added, "I am sorry my love felt like captivity." There it was again. Love wearing the wrong clothes. My turn. Adrian experienced abandonment, reputational loss, and loss of control after the divorce. I read. Then I stopped. The AI had written more. I did not read it. Dr. Lin asked. "Rowan?" I looked at Adrian. "Loss of control is not pain I am responsible for soothing." The room froze. Adrian's eyes went flat, under his breath. "You will regret making me small again." Press, for 29, brought the confession, not because he broke down, because he got comfortable. The trial had entered a strange rhythm. Official prompt, controlled answer, my challenge, his correction, private whisper, my marker, reset, repeat. Adrian began believing he could still manage both films. He knew I had the watch, maybe. He did not know live sync. He did not know Layla had already clipped the rent confession, the blind spot comment, the unstable threat, and the crawlback line into a legal timeline. He thought destruction required possession of the device, so he moved closer to it. During a scheduled writing exercise, we were asked to draft closure letters by hand. Pens, paper. No speaking for 20 minutes. I wrote one sentence first. Closure is not a conversation with the person who benefits from your confusion. Adrian wrote quickly, filling a page. Then he slid it toward me. I did not pick it up. "Read it," he whispered. "No, you came for closure. I came for truth." He leaned forward, voice barely air. "You want truth?" I wrote half those texts from your account after Boulder. My blood went cold. He smiled at my stillness. The apology to Jenna? The one where you said you needed space because you were not well? Me. The message to May saying you were exaggerating? Me. You left your laptop open. You always left things open when you cried. The room narrowed. For years, I had wondered why my friend Jenna disappeared exactly when I needed her. I had wondered why May had seemed hesitant the week after Boulder, why she asked if I was safe with myself instead of safe with him. Adrian had not only isolated me, he had impersonated me. I pressed the crown twice. His eyes flicked to my wrist. Finally, he saw the movement, but he still did not understand the sync. He whispered, "Are you recording?" I looked at him. "Are you?" The public camera caught me sitting still. The hidden audio caught his breath change. He reached across the table. I pulled my hand back. "Adrian," Dr. Lin said sharply, "hands on your side of the table." He obeyed instantly. Too instantly. Mask back. "I was reaching for the letter," he said. No one believed that fully, but I could see the calculation in his face. He needed to know how much I had, whether the watch was recording locally, whether he could get it before exit. The countdown clock showed 18 hours, 43 minutes left. We did not need 48 anymore. We needed a door. Lila made the call from outside. I did not know it then, but when she heard the impersonation admission live, she contacted the facility attorney through the emergency legal line and demanded immediate termination of the session. She cited participant safety, confession of unauthorized digital impersonation, and escalating device awareness. May called Simone directly. Dana called the on-site advocate. The room outside the room erupted before the room itself did. Inside, Dr. Lin asked for a pause. Adrian's eyes stayed on my sleeve. The speaker crackled. "We are initiating early exit protocol." He looked toward the glass. "Why?" Simone's voice was tight. "For participant safety." He laughed softly. "Because she got what she wanted?" I said. "Because you said what you did." "What did I say?" His voice was public again. Smooth. Confused. Innocent. I lifted my wrist slightly. The smartwatch screen woke under my sleeve, blue waveform pulsing. Adrian stopped breathing. That was the gotcha moment. But it did not feel triumphant. It felt like seeing a snake finally notice the glass wall. "What is that?" he asked. "My safety device. You recorded me? You recorded yourself." The lock had not opened yet. Early exit protocol apparently required a sequence. 30 seconds. Maybe less. Too long. Adrian stood. Dr. Lin's voice snapped through the speaker. "Adrian, sit down." He did not. "Rowan," he said, low and fast, "give me the watch." "No." "This is illegal." "No, you do not understand what you are doing." "I understand exactly." He moved around the table. The chair scraped. Security shouted beyond the glass. The lock buzzed. I backed toward the door, keeping my left wrist behind me. He lunged, not for my throat, not for my face, but for my sleeve. His fingers caught fabric. I hit the watch crown 3 times through the cloth. Emergency. The watch vibrated hard. File locked. Cloud duplicate sent. Legal link alerted. Live clip exported. The door opened behind me. Security entered as I tore my arm back. Adrian grabbed air and stumbled against the table. For one perfect second, every version of him collapsed at once. The wounded man, the ethical founder, the misunderstood husband, the calm participant. What remained was panic. "Delete it!" he shouted. "Delete it now!" The official cameras caught that. The hidden watch had already sent why. The hallway outside was chaos wearing professional clothing. Security moved me into a side room, while 2 staff members stayed with Adrian. Simone kept saying, "The session is terminated." Dr. Lin looked shaken in a way that made me wonder how much she had believed him before the last minute. May was on video call through Layla's laptop, crying and furious. Dana, the advocate, spoke in a voice so calm I wanted to climb inside it. "Rowan," she said, "you are out. Your file is safe. Your attorney has the audio. You did what you needed to do." I looked at my wrist. The sleeve was torn. The watch face had a small scratch across the corner. Recording saved. Sync complete. I started laughing, not happy laughter, shock laughter. The kind the body uses when terror has nowhere else to go. Layla arrived 4 hours later on a flight she had booked before the session ended. That is the kind of attorney people think only exists in televisions, until one walks into a facility conference room at midnight with a rolling suitcase. and an expression that makes producers reconsider their career choices. She demanded the official footage, preservation of all facility logs, biometric records, incident reports, camera angles, staff communications, and AI prompt outputs. She also informed them that the private legal stream had captured Adrian's admissions and attempted interference with my safety device. Simone went pale. "Private legal stream?" Leela said. "Personal safety recording preserved under the participation agreement and state law. Do not make me repeat that in court." I loved her then. The most incriminating 30 seconds were played in that conference room with 4 attorneys present. Adrian's whisper filled the speaker. "You want truth? I wrote half those texts from your account after Boulder. Then, the apology to Jenna? Me. The message to May saying you were exaggerating? Me." Then his voice after seeing the watch. "Give me the watch Delmet now. No violin music. No dramatic edit. Just audio. Clean. Ugly. Real." The facility's attorney rubbed both temples. Leela leaned back. "That," she said, "is closure. The fallout began before sunrise, not viral in the messy public way people imagine. Leela and I did not post the audio to social media. I did not want strangers turning my trauma into reaction content. The private legal link went where evidence goes when adults handle fire properly, to attorneys, the court, law enforcement, and the facility's liability team. But consequences have their own network. The facility suspended the entire Closure Lab series within 48 hours. Havenform placed Adrian on leave after receiving a legal notice tied to digital impersonation, coercive control evidence, and attempted destruction of a safety recording. Jenna called me sobbing after Layla sent her the clip related to the impersonated apology. May cried for a different reason, because she had believed a message Adrian sent from my account during one of the worst weeks of my life. "I thought you did not want me," she said. "I thought you left." We sat on the phone for an hour. Grieving a theft neither of us had known how to name, digital abuse is intimate in a way people underestimate. It is not just hacking, it is ventriloquism. Someone puts words in your mouth, then uses those words to move people away from you. Adrian had not needed to lock every door. He made the people outside believe I had closed them myself. The Smartwatch audio reopened them. Havenform's board issued a statement about an independent review. Adrian posted nothing for 6 days, which for him was practically a confession. Then he released a carefully worded note about edited materials, complex relational context, and legal mischaracterizations. It sounded like every man caught by evidence trying to make the evidence seem emotional. Then Layla filed civil claims, protective order modification, digital impersonation evidence, financial coercion evidence, facility incident, attempted interference with safety device. The Mountain House statement reopened under fraud context. The emergency account transfer re-examined. Jenna and May gave declarations. Dr. Lynn submitted a professional incident statement. Dana provided advocate notes. The official facility footage showed the lunge. The watch audio showed motive. Adrian's attorney tried to challenge the recording. Lila had been waiting for that. She produced the consent law memo, the facility device acknowledgement, the participation clause, and the live sync chain of custody. The judge allowed the audio for the protective order hearing and related civil proceedings. For the first time in 7 years, Adrian did not control the frame. He looked smaller without the edit. People ask sometimes whether I felt vindicated. Yes. But vindication is not the same as healing. It is more like oxygen after a long time underwater. Necessary. Sharp. Not comfortable at first, the audio proved things, but it also proved what had been stolen. Friendships. Years. Sleep. My confidence. My ability to trust a message with my own name on it. There was grief in being believed so late. There was rage in watching people react to the recording with shock. When I had been saying the same thing in human words for years, May said, "I should have known." I said, "He worked very hard so you would not." Jenna said, "I abandoned you." I said he impersonated me. Both things were true. Forgiveness became slower and more complicated than any closure lab could measure. The court extended the protective order. Adrian was barred from contacting me, May, Jenna, or Isaac, who by then had become my partner and had sat through more legal meetings than any new boyfriend should have to endure. Havenform removed Adrian after the independent review found additional misconduct in company communications. The facility settled confidentiality and safety claims with terms I cannot discuss, except to say that no participant in any future program there can be locked in without independent exit control. That mattered to me, not revenge. Price struck, the world loves survivor stories that end with one villain punished. I prefer doors that open from the inside. My smartwatch became an object of strange emotional weight. For weeks I could not wear it. Then I wore it constantly. Then I put it in a drawer. Then I took it out for the hearing. It had a scratch from Adrian's grab, a thin line across the glass. May said I should replace it. I did not. Some evidence belongs in archives. Some belongs on your wrist, as a reminder that your body was not lying. In 2026, personal technology is complicated. It can be used to stalk, monitor, manipulate, impersonate, isolate. Adrian used it that way. But technology can also become witness, backup memory, emergency flare, chain of custody. Proof when a room full of professionals misses the whisper. The tool was never neutral. The question was who held it, who controlled the file, and whether the truth survived the person trying to delete it. The AI system in the room had a name, Aura. The producers described it as an emotionally adaptive mediation model trained on conflict resolution frameworks, trauma-informed language, and restorative dialogue protocols. Aura did not sound like a robot. It displayed prompts on the wall and occasionally generated summaries in a calm, genderless voice. The first few prompts were generic enough to feel harmless. What do you need today? What truth feels hardest to say? Where do you feel misunderstood? But by hour 6, I realized Aura had the same flaw many systems have when built by people who worship neutrality. It treated two unequal realities as if they were competing narratives with equal moral weight. Adrian says he felt abandoned. Rowan says she felt controlled. How might both truths coexist? That prompt appeared after I described the phone incident. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Some truths do not coexist. Some truths have predator and prey inside them. Some truths require naming who had power, who had access, who controlled money, who locked doors, who rewrote messages, who was believed. Neutrality can become a luxury room for the person who already has leverage. I said that out loud. Dr. Lin asked me to expand. I did. Coexistence is not healing if one person's truth required deleting the other person's reality, I said. I am not here to negotiate whether being tracked was love. Adrian smiled sadly for camera 2. See, he said. This is why closure has been impossible. My watch marked the moment, not because his words were new, because Aura had given him a polished table to place them on. May's experience on the legal link became its own parallel story. She told me later, only after everything was over, what it was like to listen live. At first, she sat at her kitchen table with coffee, laptop open, Layla on one line and Dana on another. She expected to be bored, maybe worried, maybe angry. She did not expect to feel like she was back inside every moment she had failed to understand when Adrian whispered, still performing victimhood. May muted herself and screamed into a dish towel when he said, "You know what happens when people think you are unstable." She opened the folder of old messages he had sent from my accounts and began matching timelines. When he admitted writing the apology to Jenna, May said she felt physically sick because she remembered that week. She remembered calling me carefully, asking if I was having thoughts of hurting myself, because the fake message had made her think I was unraveling. She remembered me reacting with confusion and hurt, and she had interpreted that confusion as denial. That is the part I hate, she told me. He did not just lie to me, he made me participate. That sentence is one of the hidden harms of coercive control. Abusers recruit witnesses without telling them. They turn friends into confused bystanders, siblings into cautious skeptics, professionals into neutral observers. Then, the survivor says, "I am being harmed." The room is already full of people holding pieces of a false story. The smartwatch did not only record Adrian, it released everyone else from the roles he had assigned them. Jenna's apology was the hardest for me to accept, because it was the one I had wanted most. Before Adrian, Jenna and I were the kind of friends who did not knock. She had a key to my apartment. I had emergency snacks at her house. We had seen each other through bad haircuts, layoffs, stomach flu, her brother's addiction, my father's heart surgery, 3 moves, and 1 disastrous camping trip where we learned neither of us was spiritually called to tents. After Boulder, she disappeared, not completely. That would have been easier to name. She became polite, slower to reply. Busy, careful. She sent heart emojis instead of questions. When I finally asked what changed, she said, "I think you need professional support that I cannot provide." I felt abandoned and ashamed. What I did not know was that Adrian had sent her a message from my laptop saying I needed space from people who fed my fear and that I was working with Adrian to reduce outside interference. He attached a paragraph that sounded like me on the surface, thoughtful, self-critical, therapy fluent. Jenna believed enough of it to step back. When she heard the recording, she called and sobbed so hard I could barely understand her. "I thought I was respecting your boundary," she said. The cruelty of it was almost elegant. He had used the language of boundaries to isolate me from someone who would have helped enforce them. Healing with Jenna took time. I did not simply say, "It is okay." It was not okay. She had still chosen distance over direct conversation, but the recording gave us a starting point that was not accusation or self-defense. We grieved the friendship he interrupted. Then we built a new one with more direct questions and fewer assumptions. That, too, was evidence becoming repair. Adrian's professional collapse was quieter than people online would have wanted. There was no viral clip posted with dramatic captions, no public thread naming every offense, no pile-on I could later be blamed for causing. Instead, the evidence moved through boring channels: legal notices, board review, compliance interviews, investor calls, HR investigations, insurance disclosures. Boring can be devastating when the facts are strong. Havenform's board first tried to frame the issue as a personal matter unrelated to company operations. Layla responded by documenting how Adrian had used company devices, company cloud storage, staff time, brand platforms, and mental health credibility to distort the narrative of his abuse. She also flagged the company's risk in marketing safety technology, while its founder was credibly accused of digital coercion and impersonation. That changed the temperature. Investors hate moral language until it becomes liability language. Within 3 weeks, Adrian was placed on indefinite leave. Within 6, he resigned to focus on personal matters and due process. His podcast feed went silent. Speaking events disappeared from his website. A wellness conference replaced his keynote with a panel on ethical technology and survivor safety. I did not celebrate exactly. Celebration felt too simple. But I did breathe for years. I had watched him stand on stages using words like consent, agency, and safety, while knowing what those words looked like in our home. The world had applauded him for selling a language he did not live. Now the language had turned around and testified. That felt less like revenge than gravity. Isaac's role in this story is easy to misunderstand too. He was not the man who saved me. I am careful about that. I had already left Adrian before Isaac. I had already survived the divorce, rebuilt routines, changed passwords, found legal counsel, and learned how to sleep again in pieces. Isaac did not rescue me from Adrian. He believed me without demanding I become easy to believe. That is different. When I told him I was considering Closure Lab, he did not forbid it. He did not make my choice about his masculinity. He said, "I think it is dangerous. I think he will use the room. I think the producers will underestimate him. I also think you are allowed to make decisions about your own story. My job is to help you make the safest version of the decision, not take the decision from you." That sentence is why I trusted him. After the room, when I blamed myself, he refused to participate. I said, "You warned me." He said, "Warning you was not a prophecy. It was information. You made the best decision you could with the need you had. I needed proof, and now you have it." "At what cost?" He looked at the torn sleeve of my shirt on the chair. "Too high," he said. "But the cost is not your fault." That distinction saved me from a shame spiral I could have lived in for months. Survivors are always being told to take responsibility for healing. Fine. But healing is not the same as accepting blame for the harm done inside systems that failed to protect us. Isaac knew that. He reminded me until I remembered. A year after the Closure Lab, I returned to Santa Fe, not to the facility. I never want to see Meridian House again. I went to the desert outside the city with May, Jenna, and Isaac. We rented a small adobe house with blue doors and a courtyard full of dry wind and stubborn flowers, no cameras, no producers, no AI prompts, no countdown clock. Just silence that belonged to the land, not a locked room. On the second night, we sat under a sky so crowded with stars it felt almost rude. May asked, "Do you have closure?" I thought about it. Closure is one of those words people use when they want pain to become tidy. A box shut, a door closed, a file archived. But some stories do not close like that. They become integrated. They stop being the first thing you see when you wake up. They stop choosing your route to the grocery store. They become part of the map, not the driver. I have evidence, I said. I have safety. I have people who know the truth. Maybe closure is too small a word. Jenna nodded. Isaac took my hand. Later, inside, I listened once more to the 30-second clip. Not because I needed to suffer, because I wanted to see whether it still owned me. Adrian's whisper filled the room from my phone speaker. The admission, the demand, delete it now. My body reacted. Of course it did. Tight throat, cold hands. But then I looked around. May in the kitchen making tea. Jenna wrapped in a blanket. Isaac by the door, not guarding me exactly, just present. Blue door. Open from the inside. I stopped the clip, then I deleted the copy from my phone, not the legal archive. Not the official evidence. Just the personal duplicate I had been carrying like a stone in my pocket. I did not need him that close anymore. Near the end of this video, I want to ask you something directly. I pinned a question in the comments. If you were locked in a room with the person who rewrote your life and your hidden smartwatch captured the truth, would you release the recording publicly or let the legal system use it quietly? Go to that pinned comment and tell me your honest opinion. I want to know where you draw the line between exposure and healing, and if this story made you think of someone who was never believed until proof appeared. Stay close to this channel. Every voice here helps another quiet survivor realize the truth does not stop existing just because the wrong person controls the microphone. They locked me with my ex for closure. He thought the walls were sworn to secrecies. He thought the cameras would catch his performance and miss his whisper. He thought if he could reach my wrist fast enough, the truth would die in his hand. But the file was already gone. Live synced, time-stamped, preserved. He did not lose because I trapped him. He lost because, for once, he was recorded being exactly who he was. And I did not leave that room with closure. I left with something better. A voice no one could edit out.